Matt, how you doing tonight?
Great. Paul, how are you?
I'm great. I'm Paul, and this is my co-host Matt, and we're here with anecdotes from Matt and Paul. We're in the middle of our four-piece podcast on the pillars, the foundations of what we're all about. And last week we talked about truth, and today we're going to talk about meaning. Let's get started, Matt.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to it. We had a little technical glitch here, but before we were talking about, I want to make sure we talk about it some more. Is our music from your nephew Isaac, which I want to point out. I think it's worthy of discussing. For those who don't know, your nephew is the one who recorded our introduction, and he's a talented kid, and he was just featured on, again, the LA Tribune. Was that it?
Correct. Front page. Yes.
Front page. And, I just so impressed with the kid. And, we talked before, we'd love to have him on. And I'm sure you and your family are all super proud of him, but he's got an amazing story. And hopefully we can have him on here soon. But, without giving too much information on it, you want to tell a little bit about Isaac? I think it's worthy of it.
Yes, he's that 18-year-old individual that's balancing, should I pursue my passion because I'm really good at it, or should I go to college because I'm supposed to go to college? And so far he's pursuing his music, which I think is an incredible choice. And he produces it, he writes it, he sings it, he has a video out already. And the sad thing is people don't even know his true story of what drives him, his meaning, which we're talking about tonight. And as I was saying earlier before a technical glitch, it's amazing he gets hate from people already. You're an 18-year-old person pursuing your dream, doing what you love, and you're awesome at it, and you get hate. And he's learning to deal with that, which is such an awesome life lesson, because the sooner you're pursuing your meaning and realize it doesn't really matter what the voices of other people are, it's the voices of what you believe, that somebody has to earn the right to be up in your head, right? They don't get to just plant themselves there. And Isaac's the epitome to that so far.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the kid is just, for that kid to get hate, and again, we won't get into it too much because of what his message is and what he's doing. It's just mind blowing to me. But, like you said, you don't have to let it in. And it's a perfect example of, it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to have your naysayers. There's just people who there's people who don't want to see people succeed, right? It's just, they exist. And he's a great example. We won't dive too much into his story yet, because we could fill, a lot of time with Isaac and his story, and we will. And in fact, I think we're going to try to make him our first guest, was what we were saying earlier. So that's coming soon.
If I could say something super quick, he's probably got 100 times the praise. And so what I meant to preface that with is, it's crazy that you're super successful when you start getting the back end of that, because that's not stopping him. It's just something, I guess the sooner you learn to deal with it, the better. But the praise, I mean, he's going places.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? And that's a great point. I mean, you're gonna get the negative especially when you have more exposure, and good for him for being able to kind of figure it out, deal with it, and move on, all while doing wonderful things. So enough about Isaac. We'll get Isaac on here and he can tell a story.
You told me a story quick though, that you text messaged him when you found out he was on.
Yeah, I'm glad.
And what happened?
Glad you mentioned it. Yeah, it's a good one for me. I was saying to Paul earlier, when you shared that to the article, and he was front page and all that great stuff, I was again, I've said this before, the kid's story gives me goosebumps. It truly does. And I couldn't help it. I had to reach out to him. So I sent him a text. Hey, Isaac, Paul shared this, your the media attention, awesome. I'm really proud of you. Keep up the good work. And about 10 minutes later, I get a text back. Who is this? So he becomes a superstar, and all of a sudden he goes through his phone and he's like, who can I delete, right? Matt Huffnagel.
Did you just say the famous podcast host?
So, and then he followed it up. Actually, it was before I got both of the messages at once, so I didn't even have a chance to feel too bad for too long. He said, "Oh, is this Matt?" And then I, so of course, said, "Yeah, it is." And then we had a little banter back and forth, and he was very gracious. The kid, he's a gracious kid, but it was hilarious because, who is this? Which, just too funny.
Well, he doesn't know it yet, but he's our first guest. So
Yeah.
anyway, on that note, let's start
On that
talking
note,
about
let's
meaning.
get into meaning. That's why we're here tonight. We'll talk about that. And so meaning, as I was developing these pillars, and again, the reason I was developing these pillars was because I do some speaking engagements, and I interact with college and high school students and adults all the time, on I get asked a lot to talk about this kind of stuff. And I found myself in a position where I'm doing it enough where I thought, kind of have to have a little bit of a, well, what what am I talking about here? I can only go up and just kind of talk for so often before I say I got to put this into something. So the pillars developed in the months of me thinking about what are the things that make someone successful, and it wasn't what are the four things. It was what are the things. It became four, and it's based on reading and listening and thinking and all those things. So I came up with these four pillars, which obviously everyone's aware of right now. And I'm often asked, what's your favorite one? And I think meaning is my favorite one. And we'll talk about that, over this podcast, of course. But how did I come up with the meaning one? Where did it come from? And it comes from a story a few years ago. And as you know, I have a daughter, in her early 20s, who was in high school at the time. So this was, 4, 5, 6 years ago, whatever it was. And I was on the phone with my mother, and I'm very close with my mother, and my mother, and I'm very close with my family in general. And she and I were talking, and we talk every day, every single day. My mom and I are on the phone, and I sometimes I get off and feel bad because it's usually 20 minutes of me griping about something and talking about what's wrong with the world, or what's wrong with this person or that person. And my mom, like a trooper, just sits there and probably nods her head and rolls her eyes, but she'd never tell me that because she's too good of a mom. But I was going on and on, I'm sure, about something, and I was talking about my daughter, and something that was going on in life, and her exact words were, well, I know all you want is for Lauren to be happy. And for some reason it just hit me like in a weird way, and I said to her, no, that's not what I want, Mom. And I could hear on the other end this kind of dead silence, like, what are you talking about? Of course, that's what we all want, right? That's what we all want for ourselves. That's what we all want for our children, our grandchildren, whatever the case may be. And I said to her, you know what I want for her? I want her to have meaning in her life. That's what I want. Meaning is what drives me every day. It drives, happiness is wonderful. It's great. We all want as much as we can. But if you're striving for happiness, you're just going to fall short far too often. And that falling short of happiness, and we're told all day, every day, by the media, by the school system, by social media, by our friends, by our family, be happy, be happy. Everything's about being happy. It's about being happy. And I think that leads to a lot of disappointment. It leads to an expectation. We have this expectation that everybody else is happy, right? I mean, Paul, go on social media. Everyone's happy, right? Everyone's living their best life.
100%.
And
no filters. It's just best life, right?
Right. Everyone's just having this wonderful experience, and everyone's happy. It's just not true. And what I want people to understand is what you want is meaning. And when I do my talks and I talk to people and I do these things, when I talk about the four pillars, there's two things that I always say at the beginning that generally get them engaged and interested. The first thing I say is, I'm going to teach you how to be rich. Everyone wants to know how to be rich. Today, I'm going to tell you how to be rich, which I'm not going to tell you tonight. We'll have that discussion some other time. The second thing I'm going to tell you is what the meaning of life is. And of course, you see these, the people listening going, who's this guy? All of a sudden, this guy knows what the meaning of life is. And what I eventually get to when I reveal the meaning of life is simply this: the meaning of life is meaning. It is doing things that matter. It is doing things that matter to you. What matters to Paul might not be the same thing that matters to me and gives me meaning. And so my favorite pillar is meaning, because without meaning, you're destined to fail. I don't know where you go. I don't know where you go without meaning. I even think things like the drug abuse and alcohol abuse and depression and all these terrible things that go on in people's lives that I'm far too close to in my experiences, and probably everyone listening is far too close to that. I think one of the reasons we have some of those things to the level we do is because people aren't chasing meaning, they're chasing happiness, and that's a mistake.
That's a great point, because I feel at some point in everybody's life you find your meaning. I'm a big believer in that. Whether, I deal with high school seniors, so their meaning right now is just getting to the next step, their college, their prep, the rest of their life. And then it's a crazy little spider web / trap, because then they get to college and they graduate, and maybe they found their spouse or their significant other, and then next thing you know, you have some kids and your job and your house, and your meaning might be just trying to get everybody through the day, and next thing it's the next best elementary school and the high school and the sports teams and this and that, and you get lost in that almost artificial meaning in a way, because you've been drawn into it all.
It's a
And
trap. Yeah.
and at some point in time, if you're not aware of what your true meaning is, because that can be part of your inner meaning, that all goes away, and then you're just left with a void. And that's where some of those other issues you talked about, where I see that when parents of kids that leave high school, like, they don't know what to do next, because what's your meaning? If you knew that when you're 18, 28, 38, 48, it's more of just the next chapter of your meaning, right? And instead of just all of a sudden a quick void.
Yeah, it can be. Exactly. I know exactly what you're saying. I think that, and this is one of the things that I spoke to some students of yours recently about, and I'm a big believer in it, is you've got to find your meaning. Well, first of all, we talk about entrepreneurship on the show, right? It's a big part of why we're here, and that's I derive tremendous amounts of meaning from that, and what I have told your students and students before, and I'll tell students tomorrow, and anybody who wants to listen, is, look, you're talking about this. You go to school, and it's my criticism of education. Go to school, get a good job, go to college, get good grades, go get or go get your good job, work for 40 years, retire, and then go live your life. And you know me well enough, I don't believe in that at all. I have a totally different vision of it. And as an entrepreneur, I get to live it differently. And that's why I'm so passionate about talking to people about it, because there is a different way. As I say to anyone who wants to listen to me, there's another way. It doesn't mean there's only meaning in entrepreneurship. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I could argue that, well, I'll tell you who has meaning in my experience. Nurses. Okay. My father was ill for many, many years, and times he was in the ICU and that kind of thing. And you want to know what showed me meaning? Some nurse working 4 straight 12-hour shifts, cleaning up vomit and bedpans and blood. And you think that nurse is happy? You think that nurse is going to work for 12 hours going, this really makes me happy? No, I don't think so. I think that nurse has meaning, though. I think that nurse has more meaning than most people can ever imagine. I think you do that not because it makes you happy. Do you have happy moments? Of course you have happy moments. I'm sure with your coworkers, when someone comes out of a terrible health situation, goes off with their family, and you see, there's got to be a lot of happy moments. I'm not saying there aren't. I'm saying that oftentimes that 12-hour shift can be 12 hours of hell. How do you get through it? Because it's meaningful. So it's just not entrepreneurship. I don't want to just beat that drum, but I'm saying that's what gets that nurse to work every day for 30 years. And that meaning, in my life, was my wife and I, we were up. on a Saturday night recently at 10 o'clock, poring over these drawings of this new project we're developing and going through it. Well, working on it. And then they're up at 7 a.m. the next morning to go to our property to chop down trees. Who does that? People with meaning. And that's what I want people to get to. That's what I want them to get at. And frankly, again, I'm often unpopular, as you know. We grew up together. I wasn't popular then.
No comment.
One of my unpopular opinions is this. I don't think most people have meaning in their life. I think they're out there slaving away at their jobs, working their 9 to 5s or whatever. They track how many hours a week they work. They can't wait for Friday at 5 o'clock. They can't wait for their 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of vacation, and they're counting their days to retirement. I think that's a vast majority of human beings I know. And I just, there's a different way. And when I talk meaning, that's what I'm talking about. And anyway, go ahead. I need to take a breath.
Woo, that was awesome. No, I mean, if it was a mathematical equation or a life equation, meaning is greater than happiness. Because I always tell the kids, because they'll say, you're so positive in the classroom. Like, how are you so positive? I'm like, well, I'm not always positive, but I'm positively guaranteed to get through this day because I have a perfect track record of getting through every bad day in my life up to this point. And it's because I have meaning. Like, I was just thinking today, I'm so blessed, and it's because of years of compounding my meaning. I often don't even know what day of the week it is. And
perfect example.
Students laugh at me. Like, I take that to a certain extent. Like, I obviously know because of my Google Calendar when Saturday and Sunday is, but I get up the same time every day. It's always bright and early. I have a routine I go with, and Saturday and Sunday just mean I get like 6 hours on a head start of my truer meaning. And, I feel we could get into this. Everybody's meaning, if you're aware of it, there's certain events in your life that can actually fast forward your meaning. And I think COVID, if you had a meaning, I think COVID fast forwarded that and put you in a really good spot. Does that make sense? But if you didn't have a meaning, since COVID, you've been in a super downward spiral because you don't know what you're doing.
That's a good point. I think there's something there. I think that's if you have a meaning, COVID may have given you the space, if you will, to pursue that in some way. If you spent the last year on the couch going through every Netflix show available, I think that's probably a good sign you don't have enough meaning in your life. And I'm not banging on everybody who has a regular job who goes to work 9 to 5 by any means. And meaning doesn't have to be it could be in your church, right? It could be in what you volunteer for. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. But what I want to know from people, and this is the biggest gap I find when I talk to the dozens, if not hundreds of people I talk to every year about this stuff, is I say to them, what's your meaning? What drives you? What's your why, right? We have truth. My truth is kind of like my why. Meaning is my why. What's your why? What's your meaning? I can count on one hand how many people can answer that. And I'm glad that we're talking, and then you talk to them about it and they go, this is what I want. This is what I'm striving for. I want to take care of my parents. I want to put my kids through college. It doesn't have to be financial. I want to make my community a better place. I want to fill in the blank. And when you have meaning, you don't know what day of the week it is generally. You don't know what time it is. I get this. I was on an entrepreneurship panel today at a local college. There were 14 of us entrepreneurs from all over the country. And they blew me away. They were outstanding. I was on this panel and I'm like, I'm kind of doing some cool stuff in my life, and I got some businesses and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I have a ton of meaning. I love it. I'm on this entrepreneurship panel. I'm like, there's not only around the country, around the world. And I'm just like, these are people who have meaning. Like, they are killing it out there, absolutely killing it. And it's inspiring to me. And I just couldn't help. I knew I would bring it up tonight. I knew it would pop in my head. These are people who they're not, and one of them brought up, people ask me all the time how many hours a week I work. And he goes, I have no idea. Doesn't matter to me because I'm doing things that matter in my life because he said it makes me happy. And I chimed in, I go, I don't think it makes you happy. I think it's meaning and, blah, blah, blah. But that's that kind of stuff. That's where it's at. That's when you're doing that, when you're living like that, you have meaning. And you and I have debated for many times back and forth. Should we call it purpose instead of meaning, right? And I thought last night long and hard about this. I still don't like purpose because I can do, like, you can say to me, Paul, you can say to me, Mac, I need you to go dig that ditch so we can build a road. And that'll give me a purpose, right? I have a purpose to go dig that ditch. But there is not an ounce of meaning in that unless that road's going to be something that matters to me.
No, I think it's great. I mean, my core values, I was talking to this with my students today. I like to teach, I like to coach, and I like to help people. It's that simple. And when COVID hit, I was remote teaching. I couldn't coach anymore because there were no sports. So how do I help people, right? Well, I found a way. I mean, that can be a whole nother episode, but you if you have a true meaning, I found a way, and it's better than it's ever been today because of that. And when you can't just go dig a ditch, but if you're working at the food bank, for example, because you like to help people, if the food bank gets shut down, you're just going to go to the next avenue. It might be your church, it might be a Salvation Army, it might be wherever. If you have a meaning, you're gonna continue with your meaning. You're not gonna let any outside circumstance stop you from your meaning. You're going to be like you could have some circumstance where 99% of what you believe gets shut down, but if you have a meaning, you're going to take that 1% and run with it, right? You're just going to shift gears.
That you said it perfectly, and I'm glad you did, because there is nothing that will stop you if you have meaning. This is where your drive comes from. This is the you don't fail when you have meaning, right?
No.
You may run into a roadblock. You may not succeed at a certain part of it, but you don't stop. And there's just countless examples out there of people who they just keep going. I think I spoke before to you about if not, it doesn't matter, to Tom Brady. Tom Brady won his 7th Super Bowl, and he's up working out. I guarantee it, first thing tomorrow morning, because he has meaning. Why does LeBron James still work out the way he works out? Why does, pick a successful person? People with meaning don't rest on their laurels. They're not shooting for vacation. They're not shooting for the end of the week. They're shooting for accomplishments, and those things, they're internal. They're in you. You can feel them. You don't get meaning from your boss. You don't get meaning from the mission statement from the company you work for. Meaning comes from in here somewhere, and it's what when you fall down and lose it all, which I have before, as you know. It doesn't crush you because it wasn't about the money anyway. It was about what you're trying to accomplish. So you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, you learn from it, and you keep going.
I want to get to the money aspect of it, but I know somewhere, if we turn that Zoom camera around, you've got a picture of Tom Brady and LeBron somewhere in there. Because we've had 2 episodes and you're talking about both of them, but that's okay. You don't have to show us.
You know why I use them both, and that's funny because I guess you're right. You know why I use them both is because sports is one of the last places that I find, or one of the places that people can always seem to agree on, and in a time of such disagreement. It's kind of like sports and maybe music. If you find someone who's successful in business, there's always because they got lucky, or because their dad gave them something, or their mom gave them something, or there's always a retort of why they had, Paul, you're more successful than I am. It's because, you were given something I wasn't, right? There's so much of that in the sports world, and in even in music, I think to a certain degree, but certainly in sports, it's right there. There's no hiding from it. Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowl trophies because Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowl trophies. You can deflate gate them, and I'm not even a Tom Brady fan. You can do all, but it's right there in front of you. You can debate it. You can talk about some of these things, but the proof is in the pudding, right?
Right.
And people generally see that in sports. So I love using sports analogies because it's like, hey, who won the Super Bowl? Who won the World Series? Who won the, whatever it is? Like, you can knock them all you want. They got the trophy. So, pipe down. Like they won. They won. And if you want to win, go win. But sports is great because it's a zero-sum game, right? There's one winner and everyone else isn't. Everyone else is a loser, if you will. Yeah. And so sports is zero sum. Business isn't. Life isn't. Life isn't zero sum. So which makes it even more interesting to me that people are so hateful and, oh, it's because you were given this or you were given that or whatever the case may be. But sports is one of the last examples out there where most people could say, hey, agree, like you either won or you did. That's why I use those examples.
No, and you know what's great about that? Because it still goes to my next point. I want to get to the stimulus the government's handing out, not to get political, but just to prove a point. In sports, the average person has no problem with the zero-sum cutthroat game. Then in business, in reality, if you build relationships and you provide value, it's a win-win for everybody involved. But the average person doesn't see it that way. And I was just talking to my students today about the stimulus check because I knew one of them met with you yesterday and was talking about it. And what's the average person? If you have true meaning in your life and someone hands you $2,000, there's a lot of things you could do to just start growing and pursue some future goals and dreams. But what's the average person do? They already have it spent. And I asked the class today, where's that money flow to? And the one student, we're not going to name him, that was talking to you, just goes, it's just going to go to the people that already have their dreams and meaning in place. The money just flows that way, doesn't it?
It does. It's gonna go to the people who are creating value out in society. That's where it's going to end up. Now, that's a challenge with thinking that this is a solution to certain financial inequalities are just dumping more money into people's hands. Is without education behind it. And that's why we're here. That's one of the reasons we're talking about it. Without the education, I know right where the money's going to end up. It's going to end up with the same people who it always ends up with. The people who are, giving value. You know who didn't get a check for $1,400 or whatever the number is? It's $1,400, I believe. Is Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos did not get a $1,400 check. How much money do you think Jeff Bezos is? How much of that 1,400 times whoever got it, Jeff Bezos is going to end up with? Billions, probably, right?
Is an answer almost all of it? I mean,
right. It's going to go to the same people who provide value. I had a friend of mine kind of griping about all this money going in the system, and I don't want to get political either because I can, just like you can, we can make arguments on both sides. We'll get into that when we start talking about trade-offs. That'll be fun. Right. But the point we're making here is the money's going to ultimately end up with the people who are providing value. If you take the money and turn it into a consumer, okay? So, and that's what most people are going to go, oh, look, $1,400 or $2,800 if you're married, or $5,600 if you're married with 2 kids, or whatever the case may be. And now your $5,600, let's say, is just an opportunity to buy more. What my father would always refer to as crap. It's just it's now, I'm not saying there aren't people who need stuff, and this would be a good time. Again, I'm not interested in the politics in this particular conversation. The point is that money is going to go to Lowe's or Walmart or McDonald's or Ford or Amazon or Amazon or Amazon again, where everyone's spending all their money, which my feelings on that. But in any case, the money, if you turn yourself into a consumer, your $5,600, let's say, or your 14, just for you as an individual, is just an opportunity to consume something. What I want to see people do, and this is a conversation I had that you're referring to, I want to see them go, okay, let's take that money. How are we going to use it to better our lives? How am I going to turn that $1,400 into $100 in perpetuity, right? Or $200 in perpetuity, or whatever I can create out of it. But there's only one way to do that. You have to create value. You have to create value. And again, I'll go back to my EC panel today. Everyone was introducing themselves, and I was kind of towards the end of that introduction. And I bet 4 or 5 of the people who before me used one word again and again: value. You got to create value. You got to create value. So the answer is, and I don't even know how we got into this, which makes it even more fun, is you got to create value for people in order, if you want to be in business or whatever you want to do, you got to create value for people. And if every time you get an influx of money, whether it's from a stimulus or you win the lottery, an inheritance, or you got a second job, the goal should be to make that money continue to grow for you and turn it into more and more. Don't just become a consumer with it.
That's a great point. I mean, when we get to meaning and value, I mean, people could say I'm super lucky and blessed to teach where I teach. That's going to be a whole nother episode or two. But at the end of the day, in today's world, with all the noise and distraction around you, I feel the average high school student knows they're not getting value from their teacher. Like, taking a course on maybe memorizing the 50 states behind your head right now, like what value does that create for my future? And I think if anybody with any job, whether it's an educator, a businessman, somebody in social services, if you wake up every day and say, what value am I providing people and how can I create more, you're going to have more meaning in your life.
Totally agree. You absolutely nailed it. And that it does it right, whether you're a business person or a teacher or social services, a nurse, that value. What that leads me to think about on top of that, though, is people, there's often conversation, and rightfully so, about how does a Jeff Bezos worth, I don't know what he's worth today, 180 billion or whatever it is, after his wife took half, which, by the way, as my mom will always point out, she deserved every penny because she helped him grow the business, and she's 100% right. So Bezos is worth whatever he's worth, 180 billion. And lest you forget, Jeff Bezos, Amazon started as a place to buy books. It was like a place to buy books was all it was. And all he did was keep creating value and value and value. And you'll hear from people all the time, well, no one's worth that much money. And I disagree. I think if you can create value, which he clearly does, just as Zuckerberg does, or Bill Gates, or pick anyone, that's where you can create tremendous amounts of money. And going back to what you said before, it's not a zero-sum game, because Bezos has 180 billion. He hasn't taken a nickel from me or from you. We're not playing a zero. There's not a pie and everyone, you cut it up.
Right.
The pie can expand depending on the value you create, which creates more wealth, and on and on and on. I'm sure we'll talk about this as time goes on. But Jeff Bezos' 180 billion hasn't taken a penny out of my pocket or anybody else's. So if you're creating value, where employees fall, where employees have a difficult time, is when you're an employee. And let's say I'll use my nurse example again. If you're a nurse, how many people can you take care of, right? Yeah, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, a lot more than I could take care. I can barely take care of myself.
That's another episode.
We'll have my wife on for that one. But there's a problem there, because that nurse cannot take care of more people, right? So there's only so much value that can be created there. And now, is it more important than selling books? Yeah, I would argue it is, but there's still only so many people that nurse can take care of. But if that nurse invents a way to take care of millions of people through some sort of app or some sort of drug or some sort of, system, well, now that same person can make billions of dollars just like Jeff Bezos does.
So everybody loves meaning until somebody figures out how to scale their meaning, and all of a sudden they're evil. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really what it boils down to.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Jeff Bezos is going to scale out his meaning more than a nurse can scale out their meaning, or more than a teacher. But teachers actually have the platform today to scale it out more than ever.
100%. There's a lot of success stories out there.
A lot of us don't think that way, but it's out there.
It's out there. There's a number of examples that have turned people into multimillionaires for the same way, developing systems that they can scale, that provide value to tremendous numbers of people, equals lots of money. And I don't care whether it's selling books or teaching or selling burgers or automobiles or whatever the case may be. That's exactly right. And again, if that nurse or that teacher comes up with that system and they make billions of dollars on it, not only are they not taking anything from me, they're giving me something, right? They're giving me value that I'm clearly, if I'm going to pay them for, I clearly value what their offer is more than the money that I have to pay for it. So I'm willingly, knowingly making a trade with them. Oh, you've got this teaching course. Holy cow, it's only $500. I could do it from my house. Yeah, that's worth more to me than $500. Do that, do that to 500,000 people, and you got yourself a nice little retirement.
It's true. I mean, there's no reason you can't combine the two, and I think sometimes that gets a bad rap in society. Heaven forbid you're making money off of what your mission and what your meaning is, but I mean, why not? If there's no loser in it.
No, there are, again, we're not talking zero-sum stuff. We're not talking Tom Brady got the Super Bowl so nobody else did, right? Or LeBron won the championship with the Lakers so nobody else can. We don't live zero-sum within our system. And that's awesome. That's awesome. And that gives people more opportunities and hopefully more motivation.
Yeah, you could almost say, and I hesitate to say this, but that's why I'm going to say it. That's what drives me nuts about government and politics, because then it's a zero-sum game, because they take money in and they pump it out to people that rightfully need the service, but somebody else doesn't get a service because of it. Where in business, it's all voluntary.
Yes, and that's right. That's where the politics does get fun and those debates get enjoyable and well, I mean, we'll get into that in actually, we can get into them, all the pillars more, yes, probably than meaning, in my opinion, because I have some notes here that I'll talk about at another time, because they fall into the other pillars much better. But that's to me very enjoyable stuff that's also important stuff, worthy of discussion. And frankly, it goes back to truth from last week, which is this. One of the things that I didn't mention, I think is vital in terms of truth, is part of truth, and I won't get into this too long, is getting rid of your ideologies, getting rid of especially your political ideologies of, oh, I'm on the right or I'm on the left, therefore I have to believe this or I have to believe that, which we can have some fun with down the line, but it probably get some people upset, I'm sure, too. So
then we'll have better ratings. I mean,
yeah.
That's okay.
So another thing, couple other things I wanted to mention when it comes to meaning is number one, when I think of meaning, I always think of the word discomfort or discontent. This is where you get uncomfortable, and I've been saying this since I started becoming an entrepreneur, which I think is about 17 years ago. I really kind of got started in a small way. But and I've read this since, and it's always meant something to me. But I remember thinking this is, I got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I've got to understand that there's a discomfort here because I'm taking some risks. I'm doing some things outside of my comfort zone, right? And I know this speaks to you right now or recently. And so when I say discomfort or discontent, I mean, what's that mean to you?
It means not being afraid to let go. You could always focus on what you're missing out on, or you could focus on what you have to gain. And I think there's going to be a little bit of both. But at the end of the day, if discomfort for me means I'm going to be a person 7 years from now I don't even recognize today, where if I just always look back and see what I might be missing out on, right? It's the FOMO, the fear of missing out. Then 7 years from now, I know exactly who I'm going to be. It's the same guy I am now. And Gary V, you could read all those videos or watch all the videos of him where he's like, you've won the lottery of life. Like, how can you not be happy every day to create a new canvas just to get out there and go do something? We have a society where we can be very comfortable and be happy, but happiness, to go back to the beginning with meaning, isn't being stagnant. So you got it. Discomfort for me means just breaking through that sound barrier of life, right? Getting through that next wave, getting through the next stop sign, but stopping first, of course.
Of course.
And when you keep pushing forward, you don't recognize your old self, and that's a good thing. To me, that's what discomfort means.
Yeah, I well said. I think it's just that it like you said, in 7 years, what I'm going to be. Well, here's the thing about 7 years. My mom always says this, which I admire about her. She always says, 7 years is going to be here anyway. So you can just kind of sit here and be who you are today and be that in 7 years, or you can take those night classes or start that part-time business or whatever your thing is, or become an activist in something that's important to you, or whatever means something, whatever provides you meaning, because that's 7 years coming anyway, right? So you want to look in 7 years or 5 or 3 or 10 or whatever it is and go, look at who I am. And I know it's cliche, but I'm a better version of myself today than I was 10 years ago and 10 years before that. And I certainly expect to be 10 years from now, because I'm completely comfortable getting uncomfortable and pushing my boundaries all the time, even if it means I make mistakes, even if it means I embarrass myself, even if it means I have to look back and go, boy, I would have done that differently. But that's okay. That's growth. It comes in, you only get growth in this area of discomfort. Look, we're all here in our little comfort zone and life's okay and I'm safe and I'm happy. You got to blow through that stop sign, as you said, or whatever, and push out that and go, hey, look, this is where I'm going to fall. This is where I'm going to embarrass myself. This is where I'm going to lose money. But this is where the growth comes from. And without that growth, what are you doing?
So, not to be like all stoic or Confucius on you, but
I can't wait.
If you stop, like if you don't keep pushing forward, what's your meaning to keep living? Like, people look for the meaning of life. The meaning of life to me is to keep experiencing. And I don't even want to say growth, because maybe it's not always growth. It could be a hiccup in the opposite way. I don't want to get into yo-yos and stairs again. I confused you too much last week. I've had to send Matt 3 diagrams from that, but that's the whole point. If you're just going to stop pursuing your meaning, then what's the whole purpose?
I exactly right. And like you said, it doesn't mean once you get, hey, I'm gonna pursue my meaning, I'm gonna get uncomfortable, I'm gonna have to take some chances here, but everything's gonna be perfect, I'm never gonna take a step back. You know as well as I do that's entirely possible, but it's a part of the process, right? It's just what's going to happen. You're going to have those things. And if you're doing something that I try to advise people to not do, is don't compare yourself to other people, right? You know, other than yourself, I'm not trying to beat anybody else. There's not another human being that I look at and go, oh man, I'm behind them or I'm ahead of that one. look at it like that. I'm trying to just be a better me, and therefore, yeah, if I fall, if I fail, if I make mistakes, I know that's part of the growth. That it's part of the growth process.
So when we start getting into trade-offs next week, I think what a lot of people do is we all make choices, right? Everything's about choices. And our meaning might be why we make the choices and trade-offs we make, and that's fine. But instead of admiring other people's meanings and trade-offs, we look at the whole world based on our meaning and trade-offs, and then the average person will resent somebody else instead of admiring. And that's going to be, Lord knows, we could talk for 7 hours next week. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, buckle up. No, that's true. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. And this is why, as you know, but this is why this stuff's so interesting to us, and why we're so interested to have people on here and hear their stories, their anecdotes, and hear their version of all these things, because we know that all four of these pillars are in every one of these, everyone's story, and it'll be fun to flush those out and talk about them. The other thing that I have to mention, when it comes to meaning, I have it written here. I have meaning equals, and so you should know, you might know this. I've mentioned this all the time when I speak to your classes, and you probably tune me out real early, but I say it at the beginning, so maybe you'll know it. But when I say to your class, I say, I have one goal in what I'm doing as an entrepreneur. I'm trying to it's one word that I'm trying to find in my life, and that I'm looking for, and that all the things I do kind of follow the one word I'm looking for. I'm putting you on the spot, but do you know the word I'm referring to?
Well, I was thinking meaning.
Freedom.
Okay. You got.
Yeah.
I thought you were setting me up for like this, coming back to the beginning of our show here.
No.
Freedom's good. Freedom's good.
I say that to your classes all the time, and I had that here. To me, when I find meaning, when I have meaning, it provides me a level of freedom that I didn't know existed prior to. Because look, I spent most of my career, my early career, working for other people and having jobs and doing what most people do. And that was fine. And I thought that's what it was. I thought that's just how life was. I just went to work for somebody else, and you worked hard, and you hope you got promoted at some point or had other opportunities. And you grind it out, and you find your joyous moments and your happy moments and that kind of stuff. And then when I got into my own businesses, and I started to succeed at a level that was good, gave me a different outlook and perspective. What I realized was what it really granted me was the most important thing for me, which is freedom. The freedom to look at life differently and to do things in a different way that I never had the opportunity to do before. And so to me, meaning is one of the factors that helps lead to that freedom. And I could go on and on about that. And it's bigger than just meaning. It's also time and the other things that are important to me. But without meaning, I don't have the freedom that I seek every single day.
I love the word freedom, because there's still a lot of responsibility that goes along with that. But it just means you have more choices.
Yeah. And you're right. I've yet to find out how to get rid of responsibility. That's one that I'm not sure exists. I don't want it to. I want responsibility. Right? It's you get out of bed for responsibility.
It goes back to meaning, of course.
It does. It goes exactly right back to meaning. So, which so many things do. I think we've kind of touched on many of them, but freedom is very important to me. Without it, my life would be very different than it is. But I have to have meaning in my life to have freedom. But like I said at the beginning, meaning's my favorite one, I think, because I think it drives looking at what the truth is. And it's it is the most important one to me, and maybe not to everyone, and that's fine. But I think meaning is the one that really kind of, that's why it's my, like I said at the beginning, it's the why. It's the why work 60 hours a week sometimes, or 70 or 80 or 90 or whatever it might be, or why, I'm perfectly comfortable in my life financially. Why are you starting a new business? Why are you starting 2 new businesses? Why are you doing these things? Because they provide meaning.
So there's another gentleman I want to have on our podcast sometimes, in the near future or long-term future, it doesn't matter. And he introduced me to a lady by the name of Mel Robbins, and she has a whole concept called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. I have alarms on my clock because I like to get up early, and I'm not going to lie to you. When I'm laying in bed and sleeping, I like sleeping. Okay, I mean it's comfortable, it's fun. I think we're conditioned for it. I mean, you have a lawnmower sitting in the shed for 2 weeks, it doesn't want to start either. It's the same thing. But when my alarm goes off, I'm conditioned in my head. When the alarm goes off, I go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and I hop out of bed, because that little prompt gets me to go that I could sleep 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, or the next snooze could lead to 30 minutes. I mean, that happens, right? But that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and I'm not taking credit for that. That's Mel Robbins. I get right out of bed because within 2 minutes, I'm pursuing my meaning again. And to me, the sooner you can do that, like an extra half hour a day or 15 minutes a day, which we were talking about pre-podcast, makes all the difference. It compounds to a lot more things that you can do. And you need to have something in your life where when you say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, you're ready to roll. Like, you shouldn't need a real game clock. You shouldn't need a coach. You shouldn't need a spouse even. You shouldn't need friends. You should just have to want to get going when you say those numbers. It's just been the last year I found that, and it's just revolutionary to me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've never heard that before, but that's awesome. I can see why it does. I think in order to if you have meaning, that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go allows you to know what you're getting up and going for, right?
Yes, if I didn't know what I was doing that day, or having, because there's days, we'll get this to other episodes, especially what I've done the last 8 months. And I mean, you're doing everything new in the last 8 months, every 8 months from now. And when you have long-term projects, that's the best way to go about it, because you get to pursue that for another day, because there's no real end to it, right?
No, there's not. There's not. I get asked all the time, well, when are you going to retire? I have absolutely no intention of ever retiring. And it's because I love my life. I love what I do. Am I happy? A lot, yeah. But I'm not pursuing that. My meaning, the fact that I have meaning and I'm just raring to go all the time, and I can't wait, and I have all these wonderful things I want to pursue, that makes me happy. The thought of retirement is like, what the heck would I even do? Why would I retire? I mean, unless I found something that provided me more meaning, then sure. But it's not a golf course, and it's not, Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune or being able to tell people that I don't work anymore. That means that doesn't give me anything, because what I have in terms of meaning in my life far, far, far and away exceeds any concern over that I have to go to work or do something.
You're just conditioned that if you ever lost a meaning per se, you'll just shift gears and find another one. It's just how you're wired. It could change.
Yeah. It has in some ways over time. The things I find meaning in will adjust, and that kind of thing. I'm sure I don't. I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I don't think that when you find meaning, something meaningful, that now that's it, right? And I know that's not what you're saying, of course, but that's good for people to realize is your meanings can shift and change. And it's at certain points in your life, maybe your meaning is, hey, I got to get these kids raised and to clothed and fed and good citizens and out of the house, that may be your meaning at some point in your life, and that's okay. And then it may be, hey, I want to create a business that, makes life easier on those ICU nurses I was talking about, or whatever the case may be. But it'll definitely change. Go ahead.
No, so I mean, I thought maybe we could wrap it up. I was gonna say, in the words of the great philosopher Lil Wayne, every finish line is the start of a new race. So it's okay if you have a meaning that has an end game, but you're never going to be truly happy unless you develop new meanings. So
I think it's outstanding that you referenced Lil Wayne.
I call it Wayne storming. That's what he calls it,
No, that's outstanding. There's no better way to end a podcast than a quote from Lil Wayne.
Well,
Lil Wayne.
There is a better way. I want Matt Huffnagel to sum up in one sentence what meaning is.
Boy, I actually kind of anticipated this, and we've said so much about it, and meaning to me comes from here. No one can tell you what it is. Certainly no one can give it to you. Only you can find it within you what meaning is. And it's like, well, I'm trying to think of who said this, but it's like pornography. I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it. Someone said that. I forget who it was.
I'm sure someone said that.
Probably like Nixon or somebody. I don't know. I wish we had somebody here to look it up for us. But I think of that when I think of meaning. I think I don't know what it is, but I know it when I feel it, and it's going to be different for all of us. But I will say this: if you don't know what it is in your life, if you're thinking right now, well, okay, what's my meaning? And you don't know what it is, you don't feel it every day. It's not for me, it's what I go to bed thinking about, and it's what I wake up thinking about, right? That's what it is for me. And I think it is for most people. If you don't have those experiences, I don't think you have it, the meaning. And that doesn't mean you can't get it. There's ways to go get it. Maybe you haven't given it enough thought. Maybe you're so trapped in the day-to-day on paying the bills and going to work and feeding the kids and all that, which is entirely understandable. Maybe you're so trapped into that you haven't had time to think about it. I've been there. I agree. It's entirely possible. But if you're not going to bed going, I can't wait to get after this, you're not waking up going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and I know what I'm going to do. It's not 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and you go out and turn on Netflix.
No.
You don't have meaning, but it's out there for you. It's entirely it's the meaning of life. It is your meaning of life, in my opinion. I feel that very strongly, and everyone has it. Then no one doesn't have it. Just haven't thought about it yet. Maybe you don't even think that you're important enough to do it, but I assure you, you are.
It's what makes the world go round. It's a living, breathing thing. It's evolving, right? Well, this was awesome. So,
it was.
I think we're getting better at this, Matt.
Oh, I am. I'm not sure about you, but I'm definitely.
Yeah, well, my people will talk to your people in the next contract negotiation. We'll see what happens. But so next week will be trade-offs, and as always, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It can't come quickly enough, to be honest with you, because again, it's this gives me meaning as well. This is another meaningful thing in my life. So the thought of sitting down and talking to someone, having these kind of conversations, are just they get me going, and I guarantee I'm going to sit up all night thinking of trade-off things as well. So,
well, the good news: 7 days from now, we'll be talking about them.
Can't wait.
All right, see you, Matt.
All right, take care.
Take care.